Now streaming live on Facebook. So I'm Eric Neal. I'm the director of the Chrysler Museum, and I would like to welcome you to a discussion about art and mental health, an idea or a topic that I think is very much on our minds here at the Chrysler Museum. We have been closed for several weeks, almost 2 months now, and as I think all of you know, these are very strange times. But we are endeavoring, trying to fulfill our mission and bring art and people together. And that is really why we have pulled together a great group of people who I'll introduce as we go through, but coming from the worlds of art and mental health. And I think that if you have questions as we go on, I encourage you to send them in, and at the end of the presentation, we will go to those, to as many as we can. We hope here at the Chrysler to reopen in mid-June. We are following the directives from the Governor Northam, and hopefully around June 16th. I have to say that could change and it could be postponed, but that's what we're planning for right now. The discussion in mental health is also timely because we have an exhibition that is up right now, Edvard Munch and the Cycle of Life. And we believe that that will still be available for viewing well through the summer. It'll be up when we reopen, but we are negotiating now to try to keep it for a little bit longer. And I did a fair amount of reading when we were preparing this exhibition, and I read, among other things, this really great biography, Edvard Munch, Behind the Screen. I think that's probably backwards, but anyway, you get the sense of it. And one thing that I learned there that I didn't really know is that Edvard Munch was a person who had significant issues with substance abuse, absinthe in his case, and other things, and that he sought care. He was in a hospital and medical facility for months, if not years. And it really helped him significantly. And this was after some of the most famous works that we know, but fairly early in his life. And he recovered well and painted and was active as an artist for decades after that. So what I liked about that was it showed that this was a moment in this person's life, a moment of difficulty. He sought help, and he found a means to recover. And I thought in all of this with the coronavirus and COVID, it seems unprecedented. And I was thinking a lot about what if we had like this. And in my own life, there was a period, I was in New Orleans during Katrina. A lot of crazy things happened then too. And a lot of disruptions. And in my own life, not because of Katrina, but just because the way life happens, I lost a parent in that period. I had professional transitions. And I have to say, I was depressed. I sought help, counseling, medical help, medication, and it really helped me significantly. And I think looking back, as I look back on that time, and I think about what's happening now, I have to say that having gone through something like that does help you manage this very difficult moment. So just wanted to share that personal anecdote because as many of you may be going through some difficult times, hey, that's one person's experience, and we all have our own experiences and our own challenges that we have to face. So with that brief, inadequate introduction, let me move on to our beginning of some of our panelists. And I'm going to give brief bios in between each of them. They're going to talk for about anywhere from 5 to 10 minutes each, 8 minutes. And the first will be Lloyd Dewitt, who is the Irene Leach Curator of European Art, and he's the Chief Curator here at the Chrysler Museum. And he leads the curatorial team, and he is also the curator of Edvard Munch and the Cycle of Life. And he's going to make a short presentation about the exhibition and walk you through some of the key images and the key themes. So Lloyd, I'm passing the baton to you.
Great. Thank you, Eric. And thank you so much to all of you for joining us this afternoon for this wonderful look at Edvard Munch. So what do you think of when you look at this picture? How does it make you feel? Probably like screaming. Well, the scream is one of the world's most famous works of art. And the Norwegian artist Edvard Munch made it in 1895 after a walk with two friends one evening, and the sky turned red. Often happens in the evening, but he experienced it as what he called a scream through all of nature. And it's something far beyond how most people would experience this. So this is one of the 50 prints that's in the Chrysler's current exhibition, Edvard Munch and the Cycle of Life, prints from the National Gallery of Art, which we certainly invite you to visit when we reopen. Now, Munch was a famous and successful artist in his own day, yet he struggled with addiction and with depression for much of his life. He used his art, however, to push through, survive, and even thrive by coming to terms with and reframing his experiences and his challenges. And we'll look at how he did this. And I think that's what makes his art so inspirational even today. So Munch suffered from early trauma. His mother and his sister both died when he was young of tuberculosis. Now, as an art student in Christiania, which was also was called then, he came into contact with the sort of the demi-monde, the bohemian life. He came into contact with radical thinkers and with the theater community. And here's a wonderful print, one of his earliest prints that kind of shows this life. It's a young lady in bed. Clearly, probably the artist himself has been sharing drinks with her. So he's really showing what it means, what life is like as an artist. He had a very conventional training. He was in Berlin and Paris as well. But when we look at the scream, we think, oh, he's an isolated guy, he's somebody who's withdrawn from society. In fact, quite the opposite is the case. Here is a program he did for the great Norwegian playwright Henrik Ibsen. He worked very closely with Ibsen doing illustrations. So in fact, he's at the top of the cultural world and he's completely plugged in. So we shouldn't think that he's an isolated guy. In 1902, he embarks on a pretty ambitious project involving new and older paintings. It's an exhibition called The Frieze of Life, in which he arranged these works according to 4 stages of life. And his Great Madonna was part of the first stage. The first stage is called The Seeds of Love, and you see the semen and the little fetus there in the corner surrounding this very free and open figure of the Madonna. It really goes against the entire tradition of the Madonna in Western art. But this is just the first beautiful stage of love. In fact, Munch never had a successful or stable relationship in his life, and he didn't have any children. He obsessed for years about the one failed relationship that he did have with a young lady called Tulla Larsen. She was the daughter of a rich wine merchant. She was very interested in this relationship. They became engaged, but he tried to break it off in the same year, in 1902. And he threatened suicide. There was a struggle over a revolver. She tried to stop him. It discharged into his hand. And he with this injury, he felt very much wounded in more ways than one. And he kept obsessing about this and kept the x-ray and painted himself holding his hand. As you can see, it was a very unhealthy relationship. And he kind of shows that kind of unhealthy relationship in this print, man's head in a woman's hair of a man literally becoming entrapped and entangled. This is his friend Stanislav Przybylski is the head here, and this really quite magnificent woodcut. So that's the second stage. The third stage is anxiety, and of course that's the great stage where he puts the scream. It's the great icon of our modern condition. Here he translates that red sky into these wavy lines. In fact, what he's doing is imitating a woodcut in the lithograph. And that face, the scream face, that's supposed to be his own. It was him who experienced the scream. And he chose he remembered this Peruvian mummy, and he found that that was an ideal form to use for this face. It's a one-off. So he really tried to stretch and find something different to summarize that really powerful experience that just he had. The two friends kept walking. Also in the anxiety phase, we had this print, Crowds in a Square. Now, what better way to summarize our own fears of crowds these days? This is a later print, very raw, but it expresses that same sentiment of almost of agoraphobia in a very raw way. The final stage of the cycle of life is death. And this is where he resolves his challenges by framing them and seeing his life as part of the cycle of life. Here's this newly dead person being lifted by the dead who follow him in his casket up towards nature, towards this resolved state where he rejoins nature and rejoins, almost like conservation of mass, rejoins the world from which he came. And that's how he reframed and managed to really grasp his experiences and put them into a way that he could deal with. In 1909, his alcoholism led to hallucinations, and his friends finally persuaded him to see Daniel Jacobson, the great psychiatrist in Copenhagen, for rest and for a therapy that also included a form of electroshock, which he shows here in this drawing. But he also made new art, including a whole series, once again revisiting the theme of the frieze of life. There's a series called Alpha and Omega. It's published as a folder of lithographs, so it was a commercial project. But he did it while he was undergoing treatment, and he would go to also to the Copenhagen Zoo and sketch the animals, include them in this. But it's a very unusual story. He retells the story of Adam and Eve, the first man and woman, but they're not in a garden, they're on an island, and it's Omega, who's more of a Lilith figure than an Eve figure, who tickles Alpha awake. They fall in love, but pretty soon, here you see them with a beautiful sunset in the background, but pretty soon things go wrong. She falls in love with the other creatures on the island. He becomes insanely jealous, and jealousy is the original sin of this story. And finally, she abandons him, and he's very depressed here, and the animal takes her away. When she comes back, he's so enraged he kills her. So here, when she's gone, is the anxiety phase. And here he revisits the whole Scream composition, showing himself full-length nude on the shore of that island with the swirling lines all around him. So he does keep these compositions in mind and revisits and refines and perfects them and reuses them. And after he kills her, then the other creatures on the island then turn on him and kill him. But look, he's got his foot in the water. See how he also here rejoins the cycle of nature and is dissolved back into it. So Munch's imagery in Alpha and Omega was pretty merciless, and yet it's at the same time inspiring because he takes on his problems head on, and he's willing to examine and mock himself, and he's very often very sardonic. The animals, for instance, are actually his enemies and Tula's lovers in Oslo, is how he explained it in a text. So he does create a very sharp look at his own life. I think that's what makes him so inspirational today, is this sense of looking at himself, warts and all, and really trying to tackle his problems head on. And in the end, it's a whole life transformed by art. So thank you very much. Looking forward to our discussion.
Thank you, Lloyd. And right, not exactly an uplifting story, but I think, as Lloyd pointed out appropriately, Munch used art to confront his own demons and to deal with some very challenging things in his own life and his own psyche. Now it's my pleasure to introduce Courtney Boone, and she serves on the board of the National Alliance on Mental Health Illness, with whom we are partnering to make this, have this discussion. She is the president, and she is driven to ensure that individuals that live with mental illness and their loved ones have the knowledge and access to education and support services they need. So Courtney, I'm going to turn the microphone over to you. And I would like to remind everyone, if you have any questions and you want to send them in, you're walking on Facebook, we will make an effort to answer them at the end.
All right, well, thank you, Eric. As you mentioned, we are the NAMI, the National Alliance on Mental Illness. And I just want to let you share a little bit about what we do and who we are. We offer support groups, education classes, and advocacy efforts for individuals living with mental illness, as well as for their families and for their loved ones. Thankfully, in light of this COVID crisis, we have been able to transition all of these support group platforms over to an online version and quite quickly. This is also to include one of our new social offerings, which is an art wellness class that happens a couple of times a month that we've done through Zoom and have been very successful with, thankfully. There's no roadmap for an individual or families when they first get sick or when they are sick. What we do is we at NAMI help them navigate the behavioral health system. We have volunteers that can help guide and do link to services and resources within the community to ensure the best possible outcomes. I would say that we, all of us involved with NAMI, are very passionate about taking the in light of the COVID crisis. Oh, did we lose me?
We lost you for just a second, so
I'm so sorry.
That's okay.
Technology.
Technology, that's what we live with. It's all new for all of us here. So I would just say, you were talking a little bit about—
I don't know exactly where you lost me, but in light of the— oh, sorry?
I was going to say, just talk again. Maybe you can reiterate the services that you provide again.
Right, so we offer the support classes, the education classes, the support groups, and advocacy for not only those individuals living with mental illness, but as well their family and their loved ones. I think you all caught that we have been able to transition this all to an online platform, thankfully. The other really important thing that we do is link families and individuals with the services for them to— one of the things we definitely strive to do is to take the shame out of mental illness. And COVID has given us something good, if I could say that, and that is the opportunity for people to actually be open about sharing their struggles with mental health and repercussions from that. And so if that's the good thing that comes out of this, we will be pleased, more than pleased. We were so in for this exhibit because it not only helps us highlight what we do, but it also is partnering art with mental health, because an individual living with mental health issue and illness, that is just one aspect of that individual. And as you see with Edvard Munch, as well as you're going to be meeting Jen Novotny later on in the program, those artistic talents are so much a part of sometimes not only the therapy, but that creative outlet for the individual. So feel free to reach out to us. All of our programming is on our website. And thank you very much for being here today.
Thank you. We're going to turn now to Cole Werkheiser. And let me just say, it's always a pleasure to partner with Hampton Roads Pride. We've done that on numerous occasions here at the Chrysler. Cole is the president of Hampton Roads Pride, which is a regional advocacy organization for the Hampton Roads LGBTQ community. Through programming, events, and educational outreach, Hampton Roads Pride unites the LGBTQ and allied communities, I think that's the Chrysler, allied communities, in support of inclusion, dignity, and equality for all people. So Cole, take it away.
Thanks, Eric. Hello, everybody. My name is Cole Werkheiser, and I'm the president of Hampton Roads Pride. We're so excited to be here virtually today through the collaborative efforts of everybody on the panel. The Chrysler Museum of Art and Todd Rosenlieb Dance have been longtime partners of ours, and we're very excited to work with NAMI again today on our first partnership event. And beyond that, I just wanted to thank everyone for working together to revamp this important event in an online format. As some of you know, Eric stated earlier, our mission is to unite the lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and allied communities in support of inclusion, dignity, and equality of all people. We do this through our year-round efforts, which build strong community partnerships just like this event, but we also work to inform public policy. We fund scholarships and produce Pride Month in Hampton Roads, as well as many other year-round events. Just before quarantine began, we were embarking on plans to unveil one of the most vibrant Pride Months yet, with an incredibly diverse and robust schedule of events. Pride Fest 2020 was going to be one of the biggest and best Pride Fests yet. And obviously coronavirus affected us, and we had to go back to the drawing board for how we would re-envision and fulfill our mission statement for this year and bring those ideas to life. This year's theme, our board set down that our theme was going to be #Pride Matters. And now more than ever, we believe that that still is true. We look forward to announcing our new plans and hope everybody will stay tuned to our Facebook page for those announcements in the coming week or so. But lastly, in preparing for today's discussion, I wanted to share some statistics that I found through some online research. According to a 2017 American Psychiatric Association report, LGBTQ individuals are 2.5 times more likely to experience depression, anxiety, and substance misuse compared to non-LGBT individuals. According to the Anxiety and Depression Association of America, LGBTQ+ teens are 6 times more likely to experience symptoms of depression than their non-LGBT peers. I also saw on the NAMI website that high school students who identify as lesbian, gay, or bisexual are also 5 times as likely to attempt suicide than their non-LGBT peers. NAMI also reported that 48% of transgender adults report that they have considered suicide in the past 12 months. And so I could go on and on with more statistics, but I think we understand the importance of today's discussion through those 4 alarming statistics. And as I stated earlier, #Pride Matters, but I think it certainly stands to reason that #mental health matters too. And so I really look forward to our discussion today, and we're grateful to be a part of it.
Great, thank you very much, Cole, and looking forward to next year, and hopefully we'll have some of those events here at the Chrysler. And I think you're beginning to get the message here that what we're trying to do in this talk is in this discussion is let people know that there are avenues. If you are feeling the pressure here in this very strange time, there are a lot of people who care and they want to help you. And with that, I'm going to turn over to Whitley Richards. She is a registered art therapist and a licensed professional counselor locally here in Virginia Beach. She graduated from EVMS in 2016, yay. And she just started a new lead counselor position at Reboot Mind, Body, and Health, which is located in the Pungo area. She works closely with the teenage population that struggles with suicidal ideation, depression, anxiety, borderline personality disorder, and other issues. So that's real stuff. And so take it away.
Yeah, so I'm a local art therapist. I grew up in the Virginia Beach area, and I got my training locally at EBMS. So I just kind of wanted to talk about what art therapy is and kind of even kind of split and decipher the difference between art therapy and therapeutic art making, because they are different. So art therapy is very similar to normal counseling therapy that you go to an office and you talk to somebody about your issues, or you have in-home counseling, or you go to the hospital and you get therapy in those formats. You can find an art therapist in a lot of different settings. But basically art therapy is regular therapy, but with a creative, it's got more a creative modality added to it. So it helps you process things differently, and it's just a different way of seeking counseling. The cool thing about art therapy is you don't have to be a creative person to do it. You can go, if you're seeking counseling, you can seek an art therapist too if you're just trying to do something different. Like if regular therapy hasn't really worked for you in the past, art therapy might be something you want to try, because it does help you process events, emotions, pretty much anything that you need to process in a different way, in a creative outlet. Some myths about art therapy is that it's just arts and crafts and it doesn't really do anything, and that's definitely not correct. I've seen it really change people, and I've seen a lot of my clients come out of holes that they've been stuck in because they've decided to try the art part of counseling. So art therapy is always administered by a registered art therapist or somebody who has art therapy training. You don't want to really seek somebody out who doesn't have that type of training for art therapy. The difference between that and therapeutic art making, you can do therapeutic art making with a counselor, but it wouldn't be considered art therapy because an art therapist has special training to know exactly what they're doing and what types of processes and materials work best these are certain issues. So that's important to know about art therapy. Therapeutic art making is awesome, and you can do it at home on your own, or you can do it with your current counselor. There's many different things that you can do at home. Right now I have like a list of stuff that I wanted to express to people that they could try doing at home by themselves. One of them is, you can do journaling, do some self-reflective writing. You can draw. I do on my own, I do things called Zentangling, and I have like my sketchbook. So this is a Zentangle. It's just like the process of making patterns, and that actually helps relieve anxiety. So I know that a lot of people right now are feeling pretty anxious. So doing things that can help you process your anxiety, like journaling or Zentangling, is really good to kind of try and get that into your routine every day, to just kind of process and let go of the tension that you're feeling. I'm really happy to be here, and I'm excited to engage in this discussion. So that's what I got.
Thanks a lot. And we may come back with questions afterwards. So the next panelist is Todd Rosenlieb, another good old friend of the Chrysler Museum of Art. Todd is the founder and artistic director for Todd Rosenlieb Dance, and he's a proud chair of the Governor's School for the Arts Dance Department, another great institution here in Norfolk that we like to work with. He's a former dancer and company director for the Eric Hawkins Dance Company in New York City, and he has dedicated the last 20 years to bring professional dance and dance education to our region. His dance program, Mixed Abilities in Motion, for children and adults with disabilities, has celebrated inclusion and the love of movement and music for the last 10 years. Todd is honored, right?
Honored.
Member of this panel, and his recent company, as I mentioned, performed 2 gallery concerts in the Chrysler Museum inspired by the work of Munch and also some of Munch's literary contemporaries. It was a wonderful, wonderful, moving performance right here in Hubert Court. And I'm looking forward to the time in the future when Chrysler is going to be able to present maybe programs in-house with each of you. So Todd, I'll pass it to you.
Thank you so much, Eric. Thank you for having me. And I'm so glad to be a part of this. I was honored when I got the call. You know, dance is a physical activity. It is a sport. You are an athlete when you are a dancer. And I work with very many levels of dancers, from my professional companies to my high school students who are in a pre-professional performing arts high school, as well as adults and children with disabilities. And we all understand that being physical is good for our emotional and mental status because it releases endorphins that create better feelings, that raise your emotions, that allow you to just heighten how you feel and find a sense of fulfillment. What's missing in the COVID days right now is that you lose community. You know, when you're rehearsing with a company, you have a sense of trust, a sense of community. The human touch is part of your life every day. You have to work hard as a team. And when we find ourselves isolated, I think that all of the dancers have been struggling with the sense that their dance family is not with them. When we look at the high school student range, you know, those who are plowing forward to graduate, moving on to universities to pursue dance, there are so many parts of their physical life that helped enhance their teenage angst. And we all went through that. It's not a phrase that should be looked down upon. It is that changing and growing and get to know yourself. And part of their identity is that dancing. So being physical and then being able to identify with like-minded people is part of their security system. It's part of what lifts them up from underneath. And you know, within my Mixed Abilities in Motion, and we have 5 outreach groups throughout as well, whether it's the Ability Center of Virginia Beach or Eggleston's here in Norfolk, St. Mary's Home, and other places that we work, or it's the students that come into the studio. There is, first of all, it's essential to them. It brings them self-esteem. It brings them physical strength, which a lot of kids with Down syndrome have, you know, hypermobility, a lot of issues physically, are wheelchair dancers, you know, really challenge their physicality. That not only uplifts their spirits, but when they are not able to come together, right, they lose that sense of community that they have when they're in the studio together, the sense of achievement, the ability to share accomplishments, that idea that your friends are around you and that weekly identifying. I think that I have more problems with the parents because the kid will get up at 4 in the morning and say, time to dance with Todd, time to dance with Todd, and it's not time to dance with Todd. But it's that sort of spiritual uplift, something to look forward to, something to achieve and something to accomplish that I think is so important. And you know, I fear, and it's not unlike some other epidemics we've had in the past, that we are going to lose possibly a generation of artists, choreographers, teachers to COVID. And I think that it's important that we work hard to make sure that we stay physical, that we stay creative, that what we can do for ourselves that is best for us, just like the art therapy, is to find a way to release through physicality. That could be on your bike. That could be swinging your child around in the yard. And I am not a dance therapist, but dance acts as a dance therapy, no matter what the intention is, because basically therapeutic use of movement is to promote emotional, social, cognitive, and physical integration of the individual for the purpose of improving their health and well-being. A healthy body influences a healthy mind. And I think that as we find ourselves isolated, that we're in small situations, it becomes a great challenge. And one of the things we've done is to go virtual and to really encourage people to take class, to be with us out there. I was honored to do a huge mat class for Visit Norfolk during their tourism week. And the responses I got on the live Facebook were great. I haven't felt this good. It was so nice to feel alive again. And those things are important. So that's sort of the point of view I come from, you know, art and mental health. I'm sure dancing kept me sane. I think I'm pretty confident that over the years that ability to be in a like-minded community, to strive, to achieve, to create, to be free, definitely promoted my health and well-being over the years. So I'm really grateful to be here. And I have several areas and topics if you have questions for, I hope I can help you with.
Yeah, sorry, I muted myself. I'm unmuted now. Thank you very much, Todd. And we may come back to you. I have a couple questions I want to ask you after our next presentation. Very pleased, I can tell you, to see Jennifer Novotny here. And she is a NAMI volunteer for 6 years, and she teaches in the peer-to-peer program there. And she teaches people on how to successfully live with a mental health condition. And in addition, she also facilitates a mental health support group and takes part in reducing the stigma in the community by sharing her recovery journey to CIT police officers. So Jenny, I'm gonna let you take the microphone now. You need to unmute yourself, I can see there, and take it away.
Okay, well, thank you for letting me be here today and be part of the panel. I'm excited. What would you like me to talk about, specifically the art?
I would like you to maybe talk about some of the things that you do in your role as a peer-to-peer counselor, and maybe talk a little bit about what you share with CIT officers.
Okay, so when I go to CIT officers, I go to reduce the stigma on mental health, and I share my recovery journey so that others can hear a perspective from mental health. And what I do with art, I do a lot of art therapy because I had some traumatic items happen to me in my life as a child and also as a young adult. And I would go to regular talk therapy and it just did not help me as much as when I finally found art therapy. I was able to process things on a much better level and be able to let those emotions out creatively.
Right. I'm getting some feedback there. I'm not sure where it's coming from, but it's somewhere.
Yeah, I heard it the entire time as well.
But everybody seems to be muted. So I wish I could do something about that. And but we'll move on a little bit here. And what I'm going to start with is maybe look to Whitley first and talk a little bit more about some of the activities that you do in your practice.
Yeah, I specifically started working with oil and acrylics on canvas. Whenever I have a bad day and I'm not doing well, I like to just paint as much as I want, and it can be ugly, dark. There's no rules or rhyme, reason to it. I just go for it, and then I might put it away for a while, and then come back to it a whole year later and put another layer of a completely different painting and transform it. I don't know if Megan can share her screen. I wanted to show an example.
Chrysler, can you share any of those examples?
Okay, yeah. So the tiger, I remember I did 30 different layers of paint. When I first did the first layer, I just did it, whatever I was feeling at the time, let all my emotions out, sadness, anger, everything. And then I would take the next layer and change it again and again and again. And by the 25th layer, I try to create something beautiful. And for me, that's what art therapy helps me the most with. Letting out my emotions, no matter how dark, and then turning it into something I can be proud of. And that's the one that's next to me right now. So the interesting thing about this one was originally it was sideways, and it was a really dark painting of a tree. And you can't see that anymore. It's hidden under layers and layers, and I transformed it into one with six.
Great. And I think we can go to the next image.
That was the tree before. I was very angry that day, and I call it my tree of darkness. And that's the same exact canvas. You can feel all the bumps still from the tree on it, but nobody would know it because it's me who created it.
Right. And
Same there. That was one of the layers of the tigers that nobody knows about, is underneath all of that.
all right. And then we have one more.
So a lot of times, if I just am wanting to figure out what I'm feeling in the day, I just write down, how do I feel inside today? And I just go for it, and it can be anything. And in that case, on that day, it was a little bit of chaos and a little bit of just a big mess in a circular way. And then I do a lot of those actually on a weekly basis, so I can check in with myself to see mentally how I'm doing.
Thank you very much, Jenny. Really, really appreciate that. I'm gonna turn and some questions over to some of our other panelists now, and I thought maybe I'll start with Whitley. And if you could just maybe talk about some of the practices, some of the other activities you use in your practice that you have found to be effective, and maybe go into detail that are they tailored to different people's situations? Do you have some general advice? Maybe look at both the general and the specific.
For sure. So the population that I work with is mostly teenage females. I do work with teenage males, but for some reason, female girls are the ones that are more likely to participate in therapy. So I work a lot with girls who have suicidal ideations and depression. A lot of them do have trauma backgrounds. And I work closely with borderline personality disorder teens as well, which is a very difficult population to work with. But one thing that works with them is they're very resistant at first to any form of therapy. And so I do a lot of parallel art making with them, which is where I will bring something in and I will do it in front of them. And they're usually like, I don't want to do that. Like, leave me alone, get out of my face, basically, for a while. And then eventually they're like, hey, what are you doing? And then they'll want to kind of engage with the art making. So that is something that I do a lot with most of my clients, is I do a lot of parallel art making. That can look like I do a lot of collage work, sculpting, painting, and drawing. Of course, that's a very easy outlet. We do, with sculptures, I like to do emotion monsters, where they will either draw or from their head imagine what their particular negative emotion would look like as like a separate entity figure. I found that that's really successful because they make like a profile kind of thing for their image, for their monster. So like I want them to name it. I want them to tell me what that monster likes to do, where it likes to go, what kind of job that monster would have. And then it kind of, what it does is it separates themselves from their emotion. So then they're able to kind of know their emotion separately from themselves, and then they can befriend it and have kind of like, oh, I think my emotion monster is showing up today. I'm feeling my anxiety monster. And then they'll kind of be able to talk it out or draw it out in that way. I do this activity called emotional abstraction too, which the way I describe it to my clients is, think of an emotion and then take it out of your head and throw it into your stomach. And then you're going to draw an image or paint an image of what you think that looks like inside your stomach. And a lot of interesting things come out of that. And that's just another way of them to process not only somatic symptoms of their emotions, but kind of like just noticing what it feels like and what it looks like. So that's another thing that I do with them. What Jenny has been describing as what she does is called process painting. I do that with some of my much higher functioning clients because they're able to process through a painting better and able to walk away from their painting and kind of come back and ask it what it needs and add to it or just be done with it. That's something that we learned a lot with in my program. They actually asked us as the students to do process painting a lot. So that was something that I did a lot as well. And I do enjoy doing process painting myself. And then there was one more thing that I was gonna mention. But now I can't remember. I lost it. It went away.
Sorry, I'm getting all this, you know.
Yeah.
Let me turn to you and ask you a little bit. You know, we had those performances about Munch and dance, and maybe you could talk a little bit about the thinking that went into that process, what you took from Munch. I know we would have loved to have some more dance here and in a presentation, but maybe talk about what sort of inspiration you could find in the work of Munch.
Right. Well, it was interesting because I knew Munch, of course, the dark period. I think everybody knows the Scream and that sort of look and that feel to it. And as we got to go into the artwork itself and read a little bit more history about him, there were such connections with theater. There were such connections with that sort of artistic life outside of his actual visual. And that inspired a lot of the movements. We did pick works of art to make the dances about and then presented them in front. So you get the visual and you get the physical kinetic connection to the audience and to the artwork. And what I always love about it, and I'm giving a big secret out because it happens every time, is that when we are starting the gallery performances, the dancers look just like people who are looking at the exhibit. And all of a sudden the percussion comes in and movement, three-dimensional sculpture moving through space happens right in front of those artworks. So it adds this conversation of movement, shape, fluidity, momentum, and you can see it because it was so beautifully curated, Lloyd. That fluidity, momentum, that sort of travel. You see, I can't stop moving. I can't sit down and stop moving. It really lends itself to an experience that touches you emotionally, that uplifts you or can bring you to the emotion of the actual painting, or tells a story that is the background time to that particular artwork. So there were several points of view that went into how the pieces were created. Sometimes it's a miracle, and you could have a duet section from a longer dance that thematically works perfect for that. Like you pick out a piece of art, you're like, you know what we already have? That's exactly right. So those are sort of like miracles of melded minds. This dance was made for some other reason, but really in context with this artwork, it tells a whole different story. And I think that expands our intellect and expands our creative sense and allows the imagination to go wild.
Thanks, Todd. I'm going to turn to Lloyd Dewitt. I have another question for you, which is, if you can just, from what you know of Munch's biography, what was his life like after his period of when he really was seeking mental health care?
Oh, it's very interesting. He develops a kind of kill or cure technique about his paintings. He leaves them outside to see if they'll improve or if they'll die. And you can see how the cycle of life just keeps recurring in his imagination. He keeps at it. And that's what I find so inspirational, is that he really takes hold of that discovery of reframing his trauma and using these processes. He keeps revisiting his major compositions and improving them. And we think of it as a part of abstraction, you know, in art history, that we look towards the march to abstraction, but it's really a process of condensing, refining, and getting to that core. he was a very experimental printmaker too. He would cut up his woodcut plates and he would ink them separately and put them back together, things that no one else did. So, so this kind of radical approach to his art of leaving the canvases outside and to see if they'll survive, it's almost Darwinian, but for himself, you can see that's also how he looked at his own life and his own introspection. So that's what comes in the later phase. And you know, he does develop an eye condition and he has to slow down at a certain point, but you know, he has great commissions after that. And he's a formidable artist for decades. Plus the alcoholism is something that really is not a factor after that point. It seems to be a demon that he's excises and I think he becomes an inspirational figure. He is also an Antarctic Künstler. He was one of the ones pursued and banned by the Nazis, so that he also has that indignity to suffer later on. But it's amazing how these cycles, these motifs, these core things stay with him, and he keeps recasting them in new ways. So, so it's all things that grow out of this basic discovery.
I was amazed, having read a little bit about, read this one biography, so I'm certainly not an expert, but I have read a couple books about how the nature of his art changed very much. You know, we looked at, and the cycle of life was very important to him, but that many of his later works were of his garden, of the landscape. He went back and revisited, and he had an incredibly productive life for generations after that one painting that we all know. I mean, he really was. I think some artists, you know, he got typecast in that, but really he had a rich life and productive after that. And I think it made me really want to go to Oslo.
Yes.
So when things open up,
exactly.
that'll be a possibility. Jenny, maybe I wanted to ask you just one more question about your role in as a peer-to-peer counselor, and if you could just explain, you know, what the program is. How does that work at NAMI? What is the structure of that program?
Well, I wanted to make a correction. I'm not a peer-to-peer counselor. I'm a peer-to-peer mentor, which means I was trained by NAMI to teach an 8-week course for those dealing with mental health disorders. And what we teach in this class is very knowledgeable information on what the different disorders are. Also mindfulness skills, coping skills, and to show them that they're not alone, that we are all peers and we have been through similar situations, and it's a very intense but bonding experience for all of us involved, because we open up and share a big part of our lives that maybe these people have never ever opened up about.
And are those peers, as we say peers, are they young women, or is it anybody? I mean, who do you speak with? I'm just a little bit of the demographic of people that you. Yes, you can speak to only your. I'm not going to ask the whole program. Just what is your experience?
Over the age of 18 is one of the requirements. So for the class I teach, and also mostly anyone that has been diagnosed with a mental health disorder, whether it's depression, whether it's a general anxiety disorder, it can be bipolar, schizoaffective, it can be anything that they want to help themselves or learn more about it. And there's a large age group. I think the youngest I've taught was 19 and the oldest in maybe around 70, and it was in the same class. So
70.
Yep, and they each become a binder. They receive a binder, and every single week we get more information that they can put into the binder that is approved, you know, so that they can read all this information at home and, you know, take it with them. What I like that is really fascinating about it is the first time I personally took the class as a participant and not as a mentor, it was so much information that I actually took the class a second time because I just wanted to absorb all that different information they had.
Great. Thank you. Thanks a lot. Thanks for being here. Cole, we're getting to sort of wrapping up moment here. I'm going to talk to you and Courtney a little bit as we close out here. And that is, can you talk a little bit about what you see as some of the issues for Pride going forth, and to particularly deal with mental health. What do you think how you think Pride can help the community going forward?
Sure. So I think continuing discussions like this is certainly one way that we can do that. We brought NAMI in, I guess it was 2 months ago now, as a partner and Pride speaker at one of our membership meetings. And both of us kind of mutually agreed that we wanted to do a lot more together, especially since a lot of us are largely volunteer efforts. And so continuing conversations like this, I think, is certainly one way. You know, as far as Pride goes, I agree with a lot of what Todd was saying earlier, that you know, we are used to working together and convening for meetings every so often to produce something and achieve something together that is greater than all of us. And so not having that as a goal has certainly been, you know, something that we've had to deal with as far as our committees and all of the volunteers go, that we, you know, would be used to doing. So we're certainly glad to be here today and hope to continue this. And I think obviously next month, as many of us know, is Pride Month. And the month before that, it is of course May, which is Mental Health Awareness Month. And so I hope to continue this relationship moving forward.
Thank you. Thanks a lot. I'm gonna maybe now turn to Courtney and maybe get her to speak again after what you've heard here. Maybe reiterate some of the services, some of the activities of NAMI. We might have had some people who come in late, and just maybe a couple concluding thoughts, and I might have a couple things after that to say as well. Courtney?
Absolutely. We're only as good as these community partners like Pride, like Chrysler, like so many others that come together to do these events and have these opportunities for those who live with mental illness and their loved ones and our community at large. To Jenny's point in regard to the different things that we offer, these support groups, these social online opportunities are there and for anyone, and we highly encourage people to be part of this process, in this journey of recovery, this journey of wellness, because together, all of us in one way or another are going to be even stronger. And our theme for Mental Health Awareness Month for quite a few years is Celebrate Your Mental Wellness. And I think it changed to Celebrate Your Mental Wealth this year, because we all need it, we all want it, and I definitely we all are so very appreciative of those who have made this a conversation, and thank you.
Well, we are very happy at the Chrysler to host this. I think that these issues are felt very strongly by really very many people right now coming to the fore. And one of the things that I hope this program and others like it can do is say, hey, a lot of people are having these feelings. Many people, many more than you think. You're not alone. It's not something that is to be ashamed of. And you know, if you have the flu, you go get and you try to get the right kind of help when you're feeling that way. And there are people who are out there ready to help you. And I hope we're going to post some more information about the different institutions and people that are here. I hope that the people who are watching this will understand that there are multiple ways of dealing with these issues. And I think we've heard today that art can be one of the avenues that is very productive to your mental well-being. Painting, dance, I think writing, we heard about that. There's so many avenues, and I would encourage anyone who is watching this, might be in need, to just not go it alone, right? There are people out there, the people who love you, the people who care about you, And then finally, I'd also like to say, you know, we're going to be back open. I hope that you'll have a chance to come to the Chrysler, see some of the work of Edvard Munch or some of the other great art here, a chance for contemplation and reflection. We can't wait. This program has been part of our ongoing mission to be relevant and of service to our community. And I don't think it'll be the last time that we attempt something of this nature. I don't know about Zoom calls. You know, I think I will be happy in the day when that's not an everyday activity for us. But I want to thank each and every one of you from Pride and from NAMI, and also Todd and Cole and Lloyd and Whitley very much for agreeing to serve on this panel. And I wish you a happy day and go out and get outside and go for a walk at the very least. Okay? Nice to have you all here. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks everyone.